Thank you. As many of you know, Gilman has funds for professional development, and teachers are awarded those funds from time to time. Every summer, but not the same teacher. And the Thalheimers donated money or gave money to Gilman, and it's a very generous grant, expressing their faith that Gilman is going to use that money well. And then Gilman, I'm very grateful to Gilman for providing some faith in me and the generosity in giving me some funds to travel to the Galapagos Islands. That was traveling there was, I guess, a dream of mine since before high school. And so after about 50 years, I got a chance to go. And well, let's begin. I'm going to take you through the geography of the islands, how they're formed, and how that impacts the biology, since this is the seminal region for Darwin when he had taken his voyage on the Beagle. He went around South America. They don't talk about that very much, but if you read his book, he spends a lot of time in South America. And when he got to the Galapagos, he started seeing some connections, and this helped him start formulating his idea of evolution through natural selection. So from the get-go, from the planning to the doing of this, it was an adventure for me. I flew from Atlanta down to Quito, which is the capital of Ecuador, and then out to the Galapagos Islands. They're about 600 miles off the coast and just a few degrees south of the equator. Went to 3 of the 5 major islands, and the first we went to is the oldest island, Santa Cruz. Santa Cruz is the last one, Cristobal. Then we went to Isabella, and then Santa Cruz, and then back to the mainland. So Cristobal is the oldest. It's about 5 million years old. Then Isabella's about the newest. It's about 1 million years old. And then Santa Cruz is about 2.5 million years old. So they sort of took us around. This was a land-based tour rather than a cruise-based tour. You'll see. I think I have a picture where you'll see some of the ships that will take people around. Those ships generally hold 16 to 32 people, because to go on to the islands you have to have a registered guide. Almost the entire Galapagos Islands and area in the sea around it is a national park, and you have to be with someone who has passed certain tests and knows the geology and biology of the region. So these islands, as the Hawaiian Islands are formed by a hotspot. And this is a region where the magma comes up, penetrates the crust, and the magma comes up and will form, in this case, islands. And then the tectonic plate moves over that, and then another island will form where, when it stops over that hot spot. So those of you who have had earth science, this you remember, the lithosphere is the plate, and then just below that the asthenosphere, and then the magma comes up through the asthenosphere and to the surface. And you can see the blue arrow indicating that the lithosphere is moving, and then that moves the tectonic plate over the hot spot. Magma comes up and will form, if it's on land, a volcano. Of course, in the ocean, if it continues to erupt, produces another island. On the right shows you the formation of the Galapagos Islands. The plate is moving to the southeast, and that's why the oldest island is closest to the continent and the newest is further west. And there's the plate. The Nazca plate is the smaller plate there, just below or just off the coast of South America, and the Galapagos Islands in the upper northwest corner of that plate. Okay, they're volcanic islands. There are 2 different types of lava that are characteristic of the terrain that you walk over. These words come from the Hawaiian Islands, or the Hawaiian names for these types of lava, because they applied the terminology from the Hawaiian Islands down to this archipelago as well. So the A'a lava is lava that's very jagged, sharp, and a good portion of the island was that, and it was hard to get around on that, so they made paths for us, or for all the tourists. And the Pahoehoe lava is smoother and has that rope shape appearance to it. And the differences are based on the temperature of the lava and the flow rate. This is Aha lava forming, moving, and you can see how when it crystallizes or cools, how it would be very jagged. And then this is Pahoehoe. It's moving slower and is a smoother surface. All right, this is on Isabella. We hiked out into this region. This is lava in the foreground. In the background, you can see some darker lava. That's because that's a 1979 lava flow. In the foreground, where it's browner, the iron material has rusted, and that's only about 500 years old. And this is some of the Pahoehoe lava, and it's collapsed. This forms lava tubes. This is a small tube, and after a while, if the inner portion erodes away, then the top, if there's any pressure put on it, will collapse. All right. That's the sort of the geography and some major characteristics of how the islands were formed. If you remember from your physical science, the earth science, that when you have a raised area, as the air has to rise up to go over that, moisture is dropped on the leeward side, or the windward side, and the leeward side becomes dry. So you have a shadow desert. And that happens on the Galapagos. When I was there, they have two basic seasons. When I was there, it was the Garua, which is Spanish, I think, for mist, and it's the cooler, drier season. And most tourists go there in the warmer, wet season, which is around Christmas break or winter break, and the winter time when it's cool up here, they tend to flock south. At the different times when I was there, we were getting the winds from the southeast, and there's also in that region a cooler current called the Humboldt current, and so that's why the temperature is cooler and the waters are cooler as well. Not as pleasant for scuba diving and snorkeling at that time because the water is very cold. We did some snorkeling, and I don't think I've ever been in water that cold, and I had a full wetsuit on. Because of this elevation change on the island, you get different zones. The coastal zone is very narrow. Then right off the coastal zone, you have an arid region, and it's rather a wake-up call. When you go to the Galapagos, you think you're going to this sort of tropical island, and it's going to be lush. And when you fly in, as I did, you're greeted with all these lava flows and just sort of like the desert southwest. And it's not until you get to higher elevations that you get some of that lush vegetation. And then you can see the transition zone, and it varies in width. It may only be a few hundred yards wide. It could be a half a mile, a couple of miles wide, depending on the island. And then the Scalicia, more moisture as you go up the side. Of course, on the back side, it would be drier, but they're showing you the front side where the moisture is. All right, so this is the arid zone, just off of the beach. In the background is the harbor. We stayed, it's just a small town, but we stayed in that town. The large freighters there are bringing in oil. All of the energy that they need, gasoline, oil, comes in on tankers. A lot of food comes in on boats. And some of the smaller boats are the cruise boats that are bringing the tourists. And if you live on a boat, you go ashore during the day, then you go back onto the boat for sleeping and for meals. This is the Scalicia region where it's moister. The person there is, this tour was very nice. I thought it was great. There were 3 of us. There was this woman and her daughter and myself. This is one of the tortoises, obviously, and you can see this was it was misty and moist and wet, and the turtle there shows that the shell is moist. And as they say on the island, the turtle was being shy. In other words, it pulls its head in. If they're not too shy, they'll come out in a few minutes and continue to walk on, but if they get really shy, they could stay that way for an hour. And since these animals can't be touched, that creates a problem. The roads there are 1 lane each way, just a very few paved roads, and when you get up into that region, these turtles are not confined in any way. They're allowed to go wherever they want to. Well, if they happen to be on the road and a car happens to come along and they get shy, you're going to wait for a while. Sometimes the guides will go past the rule of not touching the animals, and they'll sort of help them along, get off to the side of the road, so the cars can go and don't have to wait too long. All right, then we have, this is the Myconia. You can see the mist there. We're closer to the top, the higher part of the higher elevation. These Myconia trees, or bushes, only get about 10 feet tall. Very lush, they cover everything, and the mist collects on their leaves and drips down, and in this region you have all these little riverlets that feed down and go to the lower lands to take some water down below. The Pampa zone is the very top zone. This happens to be a volcano, the cauldron that sank, and you can see some of the trees. This you might be more familiar with. It looks more like terrain around here, or vegetation around here. The trees are maybe 40 feet tall, maybe 50 feet tall. They're deciduous, and so you'd feel like you were not too far from this area. Now, as I said, Darwin, when he visited these islands, came to sort of linked the dots and started to put his thoughts about evolution together. And so this is a picture looking from our first hike in these land-based tours. You hike everywhere. You get taken to an island and you hike around. And we were at a cliff overlooking, I don't know whether you can see the people there, but that's a statue of Darwin. And this is Darwin's Bay. Again, you can see the mist has rolled in off the ocean, and it would come and go. Sometimes it would stay, sometimes it would dissipate in a few, 20 minutes to a half hour. So then we hiked over there, and sorry, one slide or one picture ahead. This is the first turtle we saw, and it was on the north side of this island, and so it was in the shadow desert. Wasn't the first one that I showed you was later on a little higher in the moist lands, but this is the first one we got to see, and that's a male. This is Darwin, and the three of us that were on the tour. You can see Darwin there. He's got a sea lion to his left, or your left as you look at it, his right, an iguana just behind the turtle, and there was supposed to be a blue-footed booby, but it doesn't look as though it showed up in this picture. But those are the mom and her daughter. She was an international banker, and she was just a student. She was a junior in high school. Now, some of the animals that you'll see, you can't disturb the animals. And we were on a boat, and this was a dock that we had to step onto, and this dock was only about 6 feet by 6 feet. It was one that floated with the tide. And to the left on this picture of that rope is where we had to walk. The sea lion was right there. Wasn't annoyed by us at all. But we had to make sure we didn't disturb it. We were going on to an island where we would see some sharks and marine iguanas. Here's some of the marine iguanas. They also are not annoyed by you. I'm just a few feet away from that one, took a picture of it. This is out on a beach, not too far from one of the places where we stayed. A land iguana, which very different from the marine iguana in coloration and in a little bit in body form, much huskier. We did some snorkeling. There's some sharks that are indigenous, I guess, to the Galapagos. They're called Galapagos sharks, and they're black-tip sharks. This is Kicker Rock, which is off the coast. It was about a 45-minute trip from the town. We went out there, and this is where the water was very, very cold. This is on the most southeasterly island, which was right in that cold current, the Humboldt current. We got in and swam through that channel between the two rocks. It's about 60 feet deep, and it was a little disconcerting because you'd look down, and at the bottom were the sharks. and there were probably, I'd say about 30 that were just sort of milling around right along the bottom very slowly. And they kept saying that, you know, you don't have to worry, they're not aggressive and all of that. And of course another guide said they're very aggressive, so I think they were playing on trying to get us a little nervous. And it worked. After seeing Jaws many, many years ago, I was well aware of what a shark might do to you. And so as we snorkeled through there and one of them started coming up, it was like, do I head back to the boat or do I keep with the rest of the group and hope it grabs one of them? So I just kept going. The shark didn't come up very far. It came up maybe 20 feet off the bottom and then went back down. We also saw some turtles. They have the green turtle out there. And again, they're not afraid of you. I've done turtle research here off the coast of Georgia, and those turtles know you're a human being and they try to avoid you. This one came right up to us. You're not supposed to touch them, but they can touch you. And the girl got really nervous because this green turtle kept coming and coming and coming, and it bumped into her, and she was nervous that she had broken a law and touched the turtle, but the turtle had, I guess you'd say the turtle touched her, not the other way around. Then this is a little contrast to that. This is up on Isabella. We were going out to the lava field, and it was the longest hike. It was about 10 miles, 5 miles in, 5 miles out. And in the background, you can see the lava fields, and we're in the transition zone there. All right, this is a little bit of molecular biology. If we want to understand what Darwin was talking about, this natural selection and evolution, those of you who had biology, so sophomores on up, sophomores should be about at this point in the course, that what you look like and what you can do, what your body can do, is dependent on the chemical reactions that are going on inside of you. It produces your dark hair, your light hair, male, female, blue eyes, brown eyes. That's all chemical reactions. And that's all encoded in our DNA. And so the information goes from DNA to your RNA, then at the ribosomes, the RNA is converted into proteins, and the proteins catalyze the chemical reactions. And if those chemical reactions enable you to exploit the resources of your environment, then those genes get passed on to your offspring. And so in the Galapagos, the species were colonizing species. They came from the mainland. And so there would be an ancestral type, and it was not just one organism, it was a number of organisms, each one having a slightly different genotype and therefore potentiality for different phenotypes. And as the environment selects for which of those genes is going to be successful in those environments, and the environments on these small islands are varied, and they're not far apart. It's amazing, within a few hundred yards you can pass from one of those zones to another. And with the Aha lava, you don't necessarily move very easily between those, especially the ground organisms. The turtles, they are limited to certain areas because of the lava flows and the lava formations and the terrain. And so you sort of start putting this together as Darwin did, how this genetic information gets isolated, and then the environment selects that, and then they become very specialized for that environment. Now, the most popular one we talk about is Darwin's finches. I only saw two types when I was there, and I guess they were in different areas, but we saw the ground finch and the cactus finch. And they're everywhere. That means on the dinner tables, everywhere. And they're hard to, you're not supposed to interfere with them, so you have to try to shoo them away from your dinner plate as discreetly as possible. These are some of the finches that came from that colonizing species that then radiated out into the others, and we call that adaptive radiation. Again, this is just a dichotomous key of that splitting and forming the different species. One that they don't talk about, though, is the plant. There's a plant called the Scalecia, a colonizing plant, and the picture at the bottom is in a dry area or an arid area. That's taken not too far from where we were walking out in the lava fields. And then the one above is up in the Pampa zone. Those trees, the ones that look like trees, those are from that same species of that little shrub that's growing there in the desert area. So quite variation. We'll wrap it up. We're getting hungry. Sorry. Okay. That's it.